I spent 3 days prepping for the dinner party like it was a royal banquet, not just 6 friends cramming into my modest apartment on a Saturday night. I even printed a menu. Yes, an actual menu, laminated and everything. With little food puns I thought were clever, they weren't, but the effort counted. The theme was rustic Italian, which basically meant I was trying to recreate my grandma's lasagna from scratch and had been elbow-deep in ricotta since Thursday. It was supposed to be a celebration, promotion at work, fresh start, new dining table finally assembled after 2 months of leaning against the wall. Everything was set. Candles lit, Spotify playlist curated for relaxed joy. Wine breathing like it was auditioning for a sommelier gig, and I even wore the linen shirt I usually reserve for weddings and funerals. First to arrive was Mandy, my best friend since college, bearing a bottle of wine and gossip hot enough to singe the cheese. Next came John and Eric, the couple, who always brought something gluten-free and always left with leftovers just to be polite. I was chopping basil when Cam walked in, late, of course, with his signature smirk and a mysterious paper bag tucked under his arm. "Dessert," he said, eyes glinting. "From that place you love," which was weird, because I don't have a place I love that uses unmarked brown bags. Last to arrive was Zoe, who'd RSVP'd maybe and showed up dressed like she was crashing a gallery opening. We settled around the table, clinking glasses, passing bread, complimenting the lighting, which was just 3 IKEA lamps on dimmers, and everything felt warm and easy, until I asked Cam what was in the bag. He glanced at it like he'd forgotten it existed, then said, "Oh, that? I'll bring it out later." It's a surprise that should have been my cue, but I smiled and moved on, thinking it was probably just another one of his quirky attempts to stand out. Dinner began, laughter filled the room, the lasagna was actually holding together, and I was halfway through my second glass of wine when I noticed Cam wasn't eating. He just sat there, fork in hand. I was flicking between bites on everyone else's plates like he was watching a reality show only he understood. I leaned in and whispered, "Everything okay?" And he nodded, maybe a little too quickly. Then took a single bite and chewed like it was a chore. No one else seemed to notice because John was in the middle of reenacting a story about a bird stealing his burrito on Venice Beach, complete with bird impressions and hand gestures that almost knocked over the bread basket. I tried not to let it get to me. Cam being weird wasn't new, and I was determined to enjoy the night I'd overplanned into oblivion, but something about his stillness felt off. When we finally cleared the plates and moved into the digestive and dessert phase, I'd made that a thing, complete with tiny espresso cups. Cam stood up and said, "Okay, now for the surprise," and everyone perked up like kids waiting for a magician to pull a rabbit out of a hat. He brought the bag over to the center of the table, set it down slowly, then looked at me and said, "You sure you're ready?" Like I was about to open Pandora's tiramisu. I laughed nervously and nodded, trying to keep the vibe light. But there was a weird tension under it all. Like everyone else felt it too, but didn't want to admit it. He reached in, pulled out a small, square, black box, not a food container, something more like a jewelry case, and placed it in front of me. "Open it," he said, voice steady but with this strange, hollow edge to it. I hesitated, then flipped it open, expecting, I don't know, a prank gift? Something edible? But it wasn't a dessert. It was a flash drive, plain silver, tucked into foam like it was precious. "Cam, what is this?" I asked, trying to keep my smile from slipping too far. "It's the real reason I came tonight," he said, then added, "I need you to watch what's on it before the night ends." Silence fell like someone had hit mute on the whole evening. Zoe raised an eyebrow. John coughed. Eric looked from me to Cam and back again. "Is this a game?" Mandy asked, clearly trying to cut the tension, but Cam just shook his head, sat back down, and said quietly, "You won't believe me until you see it." I stared at the flash drive like it might sprout legs and start explaining itself, unsure whether I was supposed to be flattered, terrified, or both. Around the table, everyone had slipped into the kind of silence usually reserved for elevator rides with strangers, waiting for someone, me, to break it. "Okay," I finally said, forcing a laugh. "Should I just plug it into my laptop right now? Or is this one of those watch it alone and question your entire existence kind of surprises?" Cam didn't answer, but the way he looked at me was all the answer I needed. This wasn't lighthearted, it wasn't a joke, it was heavy, raw, and somehow mine to carry. Mandy leaned closer, stage whispered, "Are we about to find out you're in a cult? Please let it be a cult. That would explain your spreadsheet obsession." A few nervous chuckles followed, but they fizzled out quickly. I excused myself, went to my bedroom, and grabbed my laptop, half expecting Cam to stop me, but he didn't. I brought it back to the table, heart thumping, and plugged the flash drive in like it was a detonator. One folder popped up, labeled in all caps. Dinner. Well, that's not ominous at all, I muttered, then double-clicked. Inside was one video file, timestamped from 3 nights ago. I looked at Cam, who was staring at the table like he couldn't bear to watch, and I hit play. The screen lit up with grainy footage from what looked like my apartment, specifically, my kitchen. I felt a chill crawl up my spine because I didn't have any cameras in there, not unless someone else had installed one. The video showed me, alone, chopping garlic, humming a tune, pouring wine, normal stuff, until the frame shifted, and another figure stepped into view. Cam. I paused the video, eyes darting to him, my voice shaky. What is this? He looked up, eyes glassy now, and said, just keep watching. So I did. The video resumed, and Cam walked up behind me in the footage, held something in his hand, a tiny vial, and tipped it into the saucepan while my back was turned. I gasped. Real me and video me mirrored the expression, mouth open, frozen. Around the table, chairs scraped back, people stood, suddenly unsure of what they were part of. I hit pause again and said, barely above a whisper, Cam, what did you do? He didn't answer right away, just rubbed his palms together like he was trying to warm up, even though the room had gone ice cold from something no thermostat could fix. John stepped between us, voice tight, protective. Is this real? Because if this is some elaborate prank, it's not funny, man. Cam shook his head, eyes locked on me now, voice barely audible. It's real. I needed you to see it before you started feeling it. Feeling what? Mandy asked, panic starting to peek through her sarcasm. Cam reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and slid it across the table to me. I unfolded it slowly. It was a printout from a lab, dated the previous day, listing a compound with a name I couldn't pronounce and a big red stamp at the bottom. Not for human consumption. It's synthetic, Cam said. Used in some behavioral studies. Non-lethal. But it slows down memory processing temporarily. Makes you disoriented, emotional. Like you're watching yourself from outside your own body. Zoe backed away from the table like it might bite her, clutching her wine glass like it was a weapon. You drugged us, she snapped. Are you out of your mind? Not all of you, he said, eyes flicking to me. Just her. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I'd be sick. Why? I asked, voice cracking. Why would you do that to me? Cam stood up slowly, hands raised like he was surrendering to something even he didn't fully understand. Because I needed to tell you something, and I didn't think you'd believe me if you weren't a little loosened up. I figured if I slowed things down, made the night fuzzy, you'd listen instead of run. So you poisoned me for honesty? I snapped. No, he said quickly, not poisoned. Just opened a window. To what? I shouted, no longer caring that everyone was watching, or that my lasagna was going cold on the plates, uneaten and ruined. Cam took a deep breath, stepped closer, and said quietly, because I've been in love with you for 5 years, and you've never looked at me like I'm real. Until now. The room went dead silent. Not shocked quiet, but suffocating, like every molecule had agreed to stop moving until someone made sense of what just happened. I could feel 6 sets of eyes burning into me, waiting for a reaction I didn't have the blueprint for. My jaw moved, but no words came out, only a strange croak that might have been, what? Or just my brain short-circuiting. Cam looked almost relieved, like the worst part was over, like confessing his feelings somehow balanced out the fact that he had literally drugged me. You think drugging me is some kind of love language? I finally managed, the words tumbling out sharper than I intended. No, he said quickly. I panicked, okay? Every time I've tried to talk to you, really talk to you, you shut me out or change the subject or laugh it off like I'm joking. And I thought if you could just see me without all the noise, you'd. He trailed off, but we all knew how that sentence ended. Mandy stepped forward, fierce now, protective in a way I hadn't seen since college when she told off my cheating ex in the middle of a coffee shop. You tried to manipulate her. You don't get to hide behind feelings and call this love. This is control. Kim looked like he'd been slapped, but didn't argue. He just nodded, slowly, miserably. I stood there, arms crossed tight around myself, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears, and asked quietly, did you think this would end with me saying thank you? No, he said, voice hollow. I just needed you to know. Well, I said, walking to the kitchen and yanking the lasagna tray off the counter. Now we all know. And dinner's officially over. Plates were left half-eaten, wine unfinished, laughter erased like chalk in the rain. People gathered their coats in stunned silence. exchanging wary glances like they didn't trust the air in the apartment anymore. One by one they left, offering quiet goodbyes and awkward apologies they didn't need to make. Cam was the last to go, standing in the doorway like he was waiting for a verdict. I didn't give him one. I just stared until he walked out, and I locked the door behind him without a word. I sank to the floor, surrounded by candlelight, cold food, and the sharp aftertaste of trust turned sour. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I just lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, the flash drive still plugged into my laptop, replaying everything like a director reviewing footage of a film I never agreed to star in. Around 3 a.m., I replayed the video again, not because I wanted to, but because a part of me needed to prove it was real, that I hadn't imagined the whole thing under the influence of whatever he used. This time, I noticed something I'd missed before. Cam never actually opened the vial. He pulled it from his pocket, but in the moment where he seemed to pour it in, the camera angle cut slightly, almost like it had been spliced. I paused it, zoomed in, squinted through the grain. My hands trembled as I opened the folder again and saw there was another video, smaller, buried inside a subfolder labeled Alt. I clicked it. It was the original footage, unedited, and in this one, Cam pulls out the vial, but puts it back in his pocket without opening it. I sat back, stunned. So he didn't drug me? Why pretend? Why go through all that? My first thought was that maybe this was some elaborate metaphor, his way of saying, I feel invisible, so I staged a disaster just to be noticed. But then I saw the timestamp. It wasn't from 3 nights ago. It was from 6 months ago, and not even from my current apartment. This was my old kitchen, the one I moved out of before the promotion, before the new table, before Cam and I even started hanging out again. I clicked back to the first video, the one labeled dinner, and now I saw the inconsistencies. The curtains were wrong. The light fixture was different. The paint was a cooler shade of gray. My stomach dropped. I hadn't noticed because it was all so subtle, so close to what I remembered, but not quite, like a dream version of a place you know by heart. I scrolled through the flash drive and found a third video, this one titled Truth, and before I could stop myself, I hit play. Cam's face appeared, close to the camera, eyes red, voice tired. If you're watching this, it means I chickened out again. He took a breath, then added, you never invited me to dinner. I made all of it up. I just wanted one last night with you, even if it wasn't real. I froze, every part of me locking into place like my body had entered standby mode. On the screen, Cam continued, his voice low and uneven, the words unraveling like something he'd practiced 100 times and still couldn't get right. I recreated your apartment from memory. Well, mostly. I know it's creepy. I know that. But I didn't do it to hurt you. Behind him, the camera panned slightly, and my blood ran cold. There it was, my old couch, my chipped coffee table, the thrifted lamp with the burn mark on the shade. All of it, rebuilt like a movie set, or a shrine. After you moved, Cam said, I realized I never really knew you, not the way I thought I did. And I missed you, I guess. I missed what we never had. My throat was dry, my skin buzzing with unease. This wasn't just obsession, it was something stranger, like he'd tried to trap time itself, bottle it up and live inside it. The dinner party, he said, shaking his head. None of it was real, not the guests, not the food, not even you. It's just me in this flash drive, in a room that looks like a memory I couldn't let go of. I blinked, rewound, played it again. Not even you. What did that mean? I opened the folder again, now frantically scanning for proof that I hadn't lost my grip on reality. Tucked in the corner was a single text file titled Invitation. I clicked it open. It was a script. Every word from the dinner party, written out in stage directions. Mandy laughs. Eric compliments the lighting. You say, is that dessert? CM looks nervous, delivers line. My hand shook as I scrolled through, each guest's dialogue. Every reaction, even my own lines were typed out like a screenplay. I remembered the dinner. I tasted the wine, felt the warmth of the room, the laughter. But now I saw it all had been scripted, planned, performed. I slammed the laptop shut and stumbled back from the table like the screen might bite me. What I thought was a ruined dinner never happened. What I thought was a betrayal was something far more complicated. Cam didn't just fake a moment, he faked my memory of it. And the worst part? I had no idea what parts of that night were mine anymore. I sat on the floor for what felt like hours, the hum of the refrigerator the only thing reminding me I was still in the real world, or what I hoped was the real world. My mind kept looping one impossible question: if the dinner never happened, then where was I that night? How could I remember something that never occurred? I opened my phone, scrolled through my photos, nothing from that evening. No lasagna pics, no group selfies, not even a moody shot of wine glasses clinking. I checked my texts, hoping for proof. Messages from Mandy, Zoe, anyone, but there was nothing recent. In fact, my last message from Mandy was over a week ago, asking if I wanted to catch a movie that Friday. My call log, too, was empty of their names, no incoming, no outgoing, no missed calls from the people I thought had filled my apartment just 24 hours ago. I stood slowly, heart in my throat, and opened my front door like maybe the hallway could explain something, anything, but it was just the same dim corridor. The scent of someone else's burnt toast lingering in the air. I knocked on my neighbor's door, hoping to see a familiar face that could anchor me, but no one answered. Back inside, I searched my fridge, no leftovers, no extra plates in the sink, no crumbs on the table. Nothing that hinted at a party had ever taken place. It was like the entire night had been a fever dream wearing my memories like a costume. I went back to the laptop, reopened the video titled Truth, and this time I let it play to the end. Cam looked directly into the camera in the final seconds, his face solemn and somehow softer than I remembered. "You always said you wanted to be truly seen," he whispered. "So I built a version of you that would never look away." The screen went black. And then, a line of white text appeared, just for a moment. "If you're reading this, you weren't supposed to be here yet." I blinked, hit rewind, but it was gone. No trace of the text, no sign it was ever there. I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. Something had gone wrong, not just with Cam, but with me, because either he was losing his mind, or I was. I didn't go to work the next day, not because I wanted to unravel all this, but because when I checked my calendar, I had no meetings, no emails, no trace of the promotion I'd been celebrating in the dinner that never was. In fact, my inbox looked barren. I'd worked at the same company for 3 years, and yet there were no emails older than 3 weeks, nothing in sent, nothing in drafts, not even a welcome email from HR. I called my boss's number, the one I knew by heart, and it rang endlessly until a robotic voice said the number was not in service. I tried coworkers, friends, even Mandy again. No one answered. No one existed, as far as my phone was concerned. I began to spiral, opening file drawers, rifling through my own paperwork, tax returns, medical bills, receipts, and the more I searched, the more I noticed that everything stopped around the same point, 21 days ago, like my life had been paused, scrubbed, rewritten, and hit play just recently. I went to the mirror, looked myself in the eye, and said out loud, "What do you remember about the last month?" And the answer, terrifyingly, was less than I thought. Flashes of moments, textures, feelings, but no clean timeline, no concrete anchors to reality. I sat on the floor again, hugging my knees, and remembered something Kim said in that final video, even if it wasn't real. It suddenly hit me. Maybe he hadn't recreated a dinner party, maybe I was the recreation. I scrambled back to the laptop and opened the dinner folder again, clicking through every file, every text, until I saw one I hadn't noticed before. It was buried at the bottom, labeled simply run_once. I double-clicked. The screen went dark, then a loading bar appeared, initializing memory sequence. Below it, 3 words. Building user profile. I slammed the lid shut, my breathing ragged. Every nerve in my body screaming. I didn't know what was worse, that someone had been watching me, editing my memories like scenes in a film, or that maybe I was never the one watching to begin with. I ran to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and stared at myself in the mirror, not the metaphorical kind of stare where you wonder who you've become, but the kind where you genuinely don't recognize the person looking back. The face was mine, sure. The familiar scar on my chin from falling off my bike as a kid, the slight asymmetry in my left eyebrow, but the expression staring back didn't feel like it came from me. It was too calm, too detached, like someone had forgotten to program the panic. I waved my hand, and the reflection followed, perfectly, mechanically. I turned my head left, then right, searching for some glitch, some proof I wasn't losing it, and that's when I noticed it, a faint flicker in the corner of the mirror. Like a dropped frame in a film reel. I leaned closer, breath fogging the glass, and there it was again, just for a split second. My reflection blinked before I did. I stumbled back, hitting the doorframe, my heart thundering like it wanted out. I ran to the laptop, powered it back up, and this time I dug deeper, searching system files, hidden directories, anything that might explain what I'd just seen. Deep inside, I found a folder labeled sim_state_backup, and within it, a document named u_r_not_her. I opened it with trembling hands, and it was all there. Rows of data, logs of emotional responses, behavioral scripts, branching decision trees. I wasn't reading about a program. I was reading about me, every choice I'd made over the past 3 Weeks, every sentence I'd spoken at that dinner, every text I thought I'd sent, it was all scripted, simulated, stored. I was the dinner guest who never left because I never existed outside of it. The Cam who loved me wasn't trying to manipulate a person, he was talking to a construct, a version of me he'd built out of memories and regrets and data. The flash drive wasn't a warning or a confession, it was a release key. I looked back at the laptop screen, which now read, termination request. Received, simulation complete, shut down in 60 seconds, and that's when the lights began to dim, not like the power was failing, but like the world itself was folding down around me. I stood up, walked calmly to the center of the room. And as the final seconds ticked down, I whispered the only thing that felt real, Cam. I forgive you. Everything dissolved, not suddenly, but gently, like dust swept into sunlight. The walls of the apartment faded first, taking with them the IKEA lamps, the framed concert posters, even the faint scent of garlic that had clung to the air. Then the floor beneath my feet shimmered like heat rising off asphalt before vanishing entirely. I didn't fall, I simply floated in place, weightless, breathless, thoughtless. All the noise, the confusion, the ache of being something I didn't understand, it just slipped away. And then, in the quiet, I heard Cam's voice, not in the room, not even in my head, but through everything. In simulation, he said softly, and just like that, I was gone. But somewhere else, somewhere real, Cam sat alone in a dim room, surrounded by blinking monitors and empty takeout boxes, staring at the black screen where my world had just ended. He leaned forward, resting his forehead on his clasped hands, and let out a long, slow breath, the kind you exhale after waking from a dream that both broke you and held you together. On the screen, a prompt appeared. Would you like to begin again? With two options beneath it. Yes or no. His finger hovered over the trackpad, trembling slightly. Before clicking no, the screen went still, and for the first time in a long time, so did he. Later that week, a knock echoed through Cam's apartment. He opened the door cautiously and found a box on his welcome mat. No return address, no label, just neatly wrapped in brown paper with a small note tucked under the string. He unfolded it slowly and read 6 handwritten words in familiar script. Don't forget. You knew me once. He looked up the hallway, empty. He looked back at the box. And for the first time in days, Kim smiled.